So it was a couple years ago, I think we were in the middle of one of the election cycles, and, which is always a fun time to be hanging out on your favorite social media platform. And so I'm, having some conversations, and Erica's there, and I discovered one of God's greatest gifts to humanity, right? Because we all have, those friends. And we friended them on Facebook maybe a long time ago when we were actually friends, but then life changed, we're not really friends anymore, or, okay, that doesn't happen to any of you. Okay, so I guess, or it's just they're the casual acquaintances and we genuinely care about them, but we didn't really know how strongly held some of their opinions were until we, saw some of their Facebook posts. And we genuinely want to see what's happening in their family and love family pictures and where they're going on vacation and some of those things. But at the same time, you're like, man, I just don't want to hear all of your crazy shares. Or we have the person who just shares everything they've ever seen come across their news feed. I think they just sit around all day and just share, and I'm like, don't care. So, okay, you can relate. Okay, all right. And so Erica and I have a mutual friend, and she said, it was time to snooze him. And I'm like, to what? She's like, yeah, you don't know about the snooze button? And I'm like, no, tell me about this thing called the snooze button. And you see their post and you click on one of the little buttons, right? And one of your options, right? I used to think the only option available was to unfriend them, which in 2023 is, major, relational disruption. I've had that a couple times. I'm like, suggested friends. I'm like, we're already friends. Oh, not anymore. Okay. You must have unfriended me. I thought we were. Anyways, and so, that's awkward to have to unfriend them. She's like, no, you can hit snooze and Facebook will magically, for free, not show you in your newsfeed anything that they post for 30 days. And they're still your friend. They'll never know you did it. Snooze. It was amazing. But 33 days later, I was like, man, why is my life terrible again? Oh, re-snooze another 30 days. I think, in fact, with this particular friend, I've snoozed him so many times that about last week or so, I was like, okay, I know where you're at if I want to see what's happening in your family. Unfollow. Because unfollow does the same thing, except they don't come back to haunt you 31 days later. See, some of you, you're like, I heard the best thing at church. Church is so practical today. We're here to make your life better. I want to give you permission. Today I want to go, but hang out, and I'm glad nobody was like, I'm going home right now because that's the best thing ever, and I'm just going to make my life better. You can do that later today. But here's what I want to do bigger and beyond that today, because we're talking about the pressure that we all feel. And last week you guys texted in, and we had 60-some people text in the response to this question. I'm weighed down by the pressure to whatever it might be. And reading through that list, it affirmed we need to talk about this because the pressures we're feeling, and it's not just that God has made us incredibly strong to be able to handle these pressures. The problem is when we're carrying too much pressure, we can't give our energy and attention to things that are more important, right? That's why we've got to talk about this. How can I relieve some of the pressures that I don't think are even good for me so that I have mental and emotional and spiritual energy to give to the things that are more important and that are best? Because we regularly give too much energy to things that aren't the best, but there's pressure from somewhere. So you told us, and I gave you a homework assignment, and your homework assignment was to start your list of I need to. And the I need tos, I hope in your list you got more than just the I need tos, the to-do, the classic to-do list thing, right? Because your I need to list might include things like I need to finish the laundry, I need to take out the trash, I need to whatever it may be, those practical things. And as you do them, you check them off. But here's the reality. Some of the I need tos that are the heaviest and the most stressful are the I need tos that never make the to-do list, because they're the I need to statements that run through our mind that usually include I need to blank more or less, right? I need to get more sleep. I need to exercise more. I need to drink more water. I need to drink less coffee. Wait, that's ridiculous. I take that one off. That'd never make the list. I need to eat more vegetables. I need to eat more fruit. I need to eat less carbs. I need to eat less sugar. I need to. We never put that on a to-do list. You know why we never put it on a to-do list? Because when we include more or less, we don't really know. It's so unmeasurable. We don't know when we've actually accomplished it. And you get too many of those. And so the reality is, I need to, more, less. And we never actually get around to it because it's too many things. But those are real pressures that weigh us down. I need to. And then I said, do this. And that's going to lead us into today's conversation. For each of those items, each of those I need to, expectations and pressures, answer this question: says who? Like, where does that come from? Whose voice is in your head saying that you need to do more of this, less of this, get this done, get that done? One of the places that we recognize the says who often comes from the voices in culture. And so last week we started this off. We looked in the book of Ecclesiastes, one of those wisdom books. And Solomon, who lived a long life and learned wisdom, writes back and he teaches us. He's like, here are all the things I tried to find meaning and fulfillment, tried pleasure and entertainment, achievement and success, technology and ingenuity, money and accumulation, power and prestige, fame and honor, knowledge and learning. He says, I tried all those things and they made my life full, but they didn't make me fulfilled. And they left me empty and still chasing meaning. These are the influences in what we might say is the voice of culture. I do believe that one of the reasons we struggle with social media is because it is a way to connect with family and friends, but as you're scrolling through your news feed of your whatever the platform may be, it is the voice of culture, right? Because you're not just scrolling through pictures of puppies and kittens, which would be awesome if that's all social media was. Life would be a lot better, but unfortunately not. No, it's pictures of your friend's vacation. And you celebrate with them, but there's a little bit of like, oh, I wish I could be there, right? And we scroll through pictures of what our friends are doing, and we feel a little bit of like, I need to do that. I need to also plan a vacation. I need to try that restaurant. I need to do that. And then we scroll through the videos of influencers, and we're not really sure how many of those influencers are genuinely doing it, or are they getting paid to say that? And then we scroll through some ads of people who are paying to tell us to buy their thing. And really, I mean, let's be honest, like the news feed of whatever your social media preferred feed is really the voice of culture, and it's this right here, or some combination of all these. I mentioned last week, we talk about the culture of workism, and here's the culture of workism that brings a lot of pressure, especially if you're kind of starting off, right? Workism says this, that if you want to be successful and have a good life, here's what you're going to need to do. You're going to need to do really well in school, get really good grades, and then go get a really good degree, which will lead you to get a really good job. And then when you get that job, you need to work like crazy. And if that doesn't provide all that you need financially, you could add 1 or 2 or 3 side hustles on the side of it so that you work really hard, you make a lot of contacts, and you can be really successful, not just because success in and of itself is wonderful and awesome, but you need to like get at it. And if you can really be successful, then you can retire early, and then finally you can enjoy a life of pleasure and entertainment. But you gotta work, go. Now listen, I'm all for hard work, okay? I believe in it. I believe in responsibility. I believe in sacrifice. I believe in working hard. But the culture of workism says sacrifice whatever's necessary when you're young so that you can have it all, so that we can get to the top of pleasure and entertainment. And in the end, you're going to find that you paid a high price for emptiness. Parents, how much pressure are you putting on your kids to succeed, to work, to prove themselves, to earn something so they can live the life that you wish you could live? And you make sacrifices that might be foolish. You say, oh, we're too busy for that. What if that is actually better than the future that you're pushing them towards, putting pressure on them? Okay, so we need wisdom. Because here's the deal. these things aren't necessarily sinful, bad, or evil. A lot of times people will come and sit down with me and be like, okay, Pastor, here's what I'm thinking through. Here's what I'm dealing with. Give me the Bible verse that's going to tell me exactly right or wrong. And I'm like, man, I wish it was that easy. Like, God is really clear with things that are right and wrong, okay? There's not a lot of gray area with things that are right and wrong. But let's face it, a lot of the decisions we face, being influenced by this, is an issue of wisdom. And so we need a better question that helps us in wisdom. Here's a key question that I want you to think about today. This is going to be our driving question that I'm going to invite you to ask God today. And I hope that the result of that is that you feel some permission and guiding from God to unfollow some voices in your life that are leading you astray and leading you away from the path of wisdom. Or to at least snooze those voices for 30 days and see if God will give you a better life, because the voices are not being heard anymore. Here's the key question. Here's what I want you to think to yourself. Ask God. With whatever it is you're considering, deciding, thinking about doing, thinking about giving your time and energy to, will this improve my outward image or my inner identity? That's the question I want you to consider today. I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about taking this promotion. I'm thinking about going there. I'm thinking about giving my time here. The question is, will it improve my outward image or my inner identity? What do you want to grow? What do you want to expand? What do you want more of, better of? Outward image or inner identity? Jesus actually had a lot to say about this. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they all pick up on it. Since we've been spending a lot of time recently in the Gospel of Mark, I'm going to look just briefly at the passage in Mark. So Mark chapter 7. Jesus is gaining in popularity. And, he's a religious teacher. He's a rabbi teaching the words of God, but he's an unconventional rabbi. So check out, here's how it starts in Mark chapter 7, starting at verse 1. So the Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law of God, the teachers of the Bible, right? Some of the Pharisees, teachers of the law, who had come from Jerusalem, they gathered around Jesus and they saw his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. Now, in parentheses it says here, the Pharisees and all the Jews, they do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. So when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. Unparentheses, moving on with the story. So, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they asked Jesus, why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with defiled, unwashed hands? And he replied, the prophet Isaiah, he was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. As it is written, and he quotes the prophet Isaiah. These people honor me with their lips. Okay, now listen really closely here to the language he uses and to the verse he chooses. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And so they worship me in vain, in emptiness, which is the same language that we read last week in Ecclesiastes, things that are empty. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are mere human rules. And Jesus looks back at me and says, you have let go of the commands of God, and you're holding on to human traditions. Okay, what's it all about? Let's talk about this. Because, you'd be like, are you telling me Jesus didn't believe in washing his hands before he ate? Gross. This is a conversation not about personal hygiene and public hygiene, okay? This was a conversation about religious, ceremonial customs and traditions, okay? Jesus would tell you should wash your hands, okay? If your kids say to you, see, Jesus said I don't have to wash my hands before I eat. Be like, not what Jesus is talking about. And if Jesus were here, he's not here. So I'm your mom, I'm your dad, go wash your hands, then you can eat. Okay, you have permission to do that. But now let's understand really what he was talking about here, okay? So in the Bible, in Exodus, in the Old Testament, Exodus chapter 30, God had given a command to the people, and he said, okay, when you go in and you build the temple or the tabernacle, the place of worship, right? And inside the place of worship, one of the most holy moments and one of the most holy places is the altar on which the animal sacrifices are offered, right? And it was basically like a large charcoal grill that they would keep going, and they would take, when people would come and they would bring an animal to sacrifice to the Lord, they would take it, it's already been slaughtered, right? They didn't, and they'd take some of the meat, and they would put that meat on the altar, and that altar was holy, and when they took the meat as the sacrifice the person had given, the priest would take the meat, put it on there, and they would offer it up to the Lord as a sacrifice. Now, if that trips you up, and you're like, man, that is so gross and disgusting, how can the Bible, do all that? Listen. Every culture, everywhere, all over the place had the tradition of animal sacrifices, okay? So don't think that the Bible is weird and bad because it's somehow like inhumane treatment to animals. Actually, when God gave laws, he actually gave them laws in the Old Testament to have more humane treatment of animals, and it was actually Christianity when Jesus died on the cross, and we said that was the final sacrifice for all that influenced humanity to stop offering animals up to gods. So just understand the culture. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation for another time. But they offered sacrifices. It was a holy moment, right? That they would take something, an animal that was theirs, and rather than keeping it all to themselves, they would give a large portion of it, the best of it, to God. It was genuinely a sacrifice, and they would take it and they would give it to the priest. And here's what God said. God said, look, you're going to create this altar. And these are going to be incredible moments of worship. And if you're a priest, you get to help that person experience this holy moment of worship by offering that to God. Don't take it lightly. So in addition to building an altar, he said, I want you to build a bronze basin and put water in it. And you priests, before you do anything, before you get close to that altar, I want you to wash your hands and wash your feet. Not because of hygiene, but ceremonially, as a symbol, symbolically acknowledging that God is holy and I am not. And God is pure and I am not. And I want to be pure, I want to be close to God, but I need to be cleaned up. And I am actually incapable of cleaning myself up. This is the whole message of the Bible, actually. But do we have a God who loves us enough? And even though he is pure and we are impure, he does not keep us away because he's so worried that we might make him impure. No, he invites us close and he cleans us up. He purifies us. God makes us holy. That's how much he loves us. And so to symbolically remind yourselves of that, before you go to that altar and before you go to that holy moment, wash your hands, wash your feet, and be reminded. It was not hygienic. It was powerful symbol that reminded them of the love of God, the purity of God, and the impurity of my own self and as humans. Fast forward to the time when the land of Israel is invaded, the temple is destroyed, the people are exiled to Babylon. And now they're living in Babylon, which is what we're going to talk about. In some ways, living in our culture in 2003 is a lot like God's people living in Babylon 700, 600 years before Jesus. So come to the men's retreat. We'll talk about that even more, what it looks like. Text us at 360-552-7794. We'll send you the link. You can get advertised. You can get registered. I registered on Wednesday afternoon. It was super easy. Okay, anyways, you should do it. No, seriously. All right, so they're living in Babylon. There is no temple. There is no altar. There are no sacrifices. What do we do now? And so the elders came together and they said, you know what? This is still a really powerful symbol. So here's what I want you to do. Let's treat our dinner tables at home as if they're like the altar. And let's treat the meat that we offer our families for dinner like the gift that we would have placed on that altar. And so before we eat it, let's go around and let's all wash our hands. It just happens to be good hygiene, but that's not the point of it, right? Ceremoniously is a symbol that says, I need God to make me who he wants me to be. I need God to come and clean me up from the inside out. Well, then they kind of began to overthink it just a little bit, and they said, well, okay. But what if the meat, it's like an offering to God. What if the meat was cooked in a pot that was unclean? Then the pot makes the meat unclean also. So why are we washing our hands to eat meat that's already been made unclean and the whole holy moment thing is ruined? We also need to wash the pot. Well, if we're going to wash the pot, we need to wash the utensil. And if we need to wash the utensil, and then it became like, you can just like, you can imagine how this is what we humans do, right? We take a really good idea that's really meaningful, and then we complicate it because we love to make things complicated so that we have all of our bases covered. And it became this long, exhausting list of everything that needed to be ceremoniously washed, cleaned, and then they would do it multiple times. They're like, right? Like, what if I accidentally missed a couple of inches of skin? Let's just wash our hands 2 times. Let's wash our hands 3. It became this long list of traditions, not even based on a specific law in the Old Testament said you have to do this, but it was like for the priests at the temple. But the elders said, let's do this. And you know how it is when you start a tradition. Traditions are like hard to start, and they are hard to kill. They're hard to make it all go away. And they easily get expanded into complexity, exhausting complexity. And so by the time we get to Jesus' time, people are like giving so much time and energy to all this custom and these traditions and these rules and procedures of endlessly washing their hands and everything else. There were people in Jesus' day who understood, like, we got to get back to the heart of the matter. We are spending way too much time and energy on, like, washing things and not enough energy on the heart of the matter, which is loving God, honoring God. There's way too much external stuff. And so some people in Jesus' day, and shortly before Jesus' time, actually refused to follow the tradition of the elders and also wash their hands. And there's a story of one guy who was well known and said, we need to stop this foolishness of all this ceremonially, ritual, symbolic washing. And so he refused to do it. And when he died, the elders heard about it, and they ordered that a large stone be placed on top of his coffin, symbolically stoning him for refusing to follow the tradition of the elders and wash his hands, which effectively socially shamed him and anybody else who would dare break the rules. Wash your hands, you filthy sinners. Jesus comes along. He says, guys, really? Let's get back to the heart of the matter. Skip down to verse 14. Similar is this issue of clean and unclean food. Verse 14, again, Jesus called the crowd to him and he said, listen to me, everyone, understand this. Nothing outside of a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. And then down to verse 18. Are you so dull, he asked? Don't you see? Nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them. For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out the body. And in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. But he went on. He said, what comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come, including sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, folly. All of these evils, they come from within and defile a person. See, in addition to all these rules about washing everything, there were a lot of rules about clean food and unclean food, originating from the Old Testament, okay? These weren't even like the man-made rules, but then they'd added some extra man-made rules to that as well. And Jesus is like, you guys are obsessing. You're giving way too much time and energy on all these foods that are clean versus unclean, and food that was formerly known as clean, but now it touched something that was unclean and it became unclean, and you're just obsessed. He's like, look, is it really the food that makes a person unclean? Shouldn't we think about more of the stuff that's already in you? Like food just goes in, stomach, digestive system, it's gone, energy, like. Is it really the food that goes in you that makes you unclean that we should be most concerned about? Or is it what comes out of you? Envy, greed, unable to get along. Why? Selfishness, pride, all that stuff comes from within. Jesus says we can focus on like stomach or we can focus on heart. And when he says heart, it's not like, even though we point here, not like the organ that pumps blood, but like the center of your being, the core of your identity that drives the decisions you make, the things you value, the things you give your time to. It's like that, your heart, the core of your identity, that's way more important than the external stuff of washing hands, food, unclean, clean, all that kinds of stuff. And Jesus helps us to understand and to start to make a distinction between that which is outward and that which is inward. And if you think about it, these guys didn't mean to get off track. They meant well. You know why it's so easy to get off track? Because it's easier to deal with stuff that's outward, behavior-oriented, than it is the inward stuff. Because stuff on the external, it can easily be measured, whether you are falling in line or not. It's really easy to earn points and take away points based solely on behavior and appearance and all the external stuff. The internal stuff, I believe it can be measured, but it's really hard to measure. And so we default to the external. So sometimes as parents we do this, right? We want to teach our kids to behave, and it's important to teach our kids to behave. But how often do we force our kids to behave, only focus on their behavior because it's just simply easier to manage behavior than it is to talk about and grow their heart and their identity? The outward stuff usually has a quick payoff. And so it's a short-term project. We'd rather give our time and energy to short-term projects that have a quick payoff than the inner stuff that's a long-term project with a long-term slow payoff. But here's the problem. If you fill your life giving your time and energy to all the outward stuff, you'll end up with a full life but not fulfilled. And the more you focus on all the outward, the higher the pressure, the higher the stress, the higher the anxiety, the worse life is. Real fulfillment comes from having given time and energy to the inward self. The essential problem here, and this is not really a great phrase for it. The best phrase that I've been able to come up with is that we humans have a capacity for complexity. And the more complex things get, the more energy we have to give to managing a very complex system, which fills up our mental and emotional capacity. And so what we do in a complex system is we try to simplify it down to the easiest set of manageable rules and behaviors. We'll take something that's really complex and we'll make it manageable. And almost every time, that'll get us focusing on the externals, behaviors, our image. Because that's so much easier than taking something complex and reducing it for an inner identity. So let's go back to the key question here. With whatever I'm thinking about, what I'm giving my time to, will it improve my outward image or my inner identity? And Jesus says, guys, we have this way too complex list of clean and unclean, washing hands, all way too complex. And we forced people to give all their energy to that, which makes them look good. And then they obey those rules, and everybody who obeys those rules gets points. And the people who are they question those externals so they can give time to the things of the heart and identity, they get a rock put on their tomb. They get ostracized, made fun of. They're the social outcasts because they're not conforming to the image that we all need to project to look good. And the result is it turns us into a bunch of people pleasers. And I'd like to suggest to you that in 2023, life has become so complex that we have no capacity to give time to our inner self, to grow our inner self, to grow our identity in who God wants us to be on the inside. And so we spend time and energy making sure our image is just right. And we earn some points there. All the while knowing that we're faking it. But again, we come by it naturally. My parents were here a couple of weeks ago, and so my mom brought some of my old stuff, and in this envelope she had my class pictures from kindergarten to 6th grade. It was so much fun looking back at them, right? And so I find like my kindergarten picture, and who do you think I looked for first? Me, right? 2nd grade picture, there I am. 3rd grade picture, there I am. 6th grade picture, and like 6th grade was great. Like in elementary school, 6th grade was a blast, best class. In fact, later I did a little thing. I'm like, I wonder if I can still remember all the first names of my 6th grade friends in my class, and I could remember almost all of them. It was this weird thing that I could just, it was a really great time, right? But who did I look at first? Me. And trust me, you don't want to see a picture of pre-adolescent Jason. Like, that's not a good picture, right? And so what happens in any group picture that you're in, you look at yourself and you immediately start to diagnose and evaluate, okay, do I look good enough to be in this picture, or do I need to call somebody and say, hey, you need to take that picture offline right now because I cannot be in that picture. Like, we have some rules around our house about pictures that you get to post of other family members without or their permission, and sometimes there's a price to be paid of posting and sharing unapproved, unauthorized pictures. Because we look at a picture and we see ourselves. We stand in the mirror, we see ourselves. I would invite you to raise your hands, but no, let's not do it. When you stand in the mirror and look at yourself, do you love what you see, or do you criticize what you see? You're like, okay, if I say that I love what I see, he's going to say I'm prideful. If I say I don't like and I criticize what I see, he's going to say, why do you criticize yourself so much? Yeah. So we just stand in the mirror and we can't really sure whether we like or dislike what we see looking back at us, right? One of the challenges of looking at ourselves in the mirror is we see all of our imperfections and we see ourselves as we think other people see us. And what happens is when you look at your image in a mirror, you begin to objectify yourself, not looking at your true self. You're not looking at who you are, your sense of identity. You're looking at your outward image of yourself as people see you. And you become an object. And you're like, I need to fix that so that they like what they see when they see that. Here's some good news. People don't think about you very often. That's right, you don't have to worry about that. You are way more critical on yourself than other people are because people are not thinking about you nearly as often as you think they are. Why? Because they're thinking about themselves. And they're worried about what you're thinking of them. They're not thinking about what they think of you. We're all just kind of obsessed with ourselves and our image. And so it is easy for us and natural for us to put most of our time and energy into me, into the object that I become when you see me, the outward. And Jesus says, no. Give your time and energy to the inner you. So when I was in college, I was in the choir. I know, super nerdy. And we got to travel and sing. And so one weekend we were traveling and we were singing, and I can remember it so clearly. We're in Wichita, we're singing. And I was singing very boldly and very confidently until we got to that one part in the song when the whole choir stopped and like music is made beautiful by the rests, but I didn't rest. And I sang out that quarter note very loudly, and I was the only one in the choir who sang out, La! Super embarrassing. I'm pretty sure my face went like instantly beet red. So embarrassed. Got over it mostly, but I can still remember it. Okay, now think about this. How many of the 28 other people in that choir still remember that 25 years ago in a church in Wichita, Jason Matters sang the wrong note at the wrong time and embarrassed all of us? We're going to look down on him. If they still remember that, there's something wrong with them. They need to be unfollowed, right? If they're still holding that against me and looking down on me for that. But I remember it because of how I felt and how I experienced it, and I was embarrassed. It's just natural. The reality is, probably nobody has thought about that moment in the last 25 years, except me. So why do I give so much energy to it? And Jesus says, I want you to spend most of your energy working not on your external image, but on your internal identity. And before you think that sounds a little bit selfish, which option is going to lead you to love and serve people better and more? If you spend more of your time working on your internal identity and who you are inside, you're going to love people and serve people better. Because you're going to love them not for what you can get out of it and how your love will help build your image. But if you pour your energy into the external version of you and projecting a great image in everybody else, you might love people, but you're really going to use people. You might look like you're serving people, but you're just serving for what you can get back out of it. And so we go back to the question. With everything I do, the pressures that I feel are on me, the decisions that I make, the things that I value, where I spend my time, my energy, my money, do I do it to improve my outward image or to grow my inner identity? And listen, I don't want to be a people pleaser, but I struggle. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to be a people pleaser, but if you're human, I'm guessing you struggle. Jesus says, I want to help you with that. So you went home and you did your homework. And you made that list of all the I need tos. And then you wrote a list for each I need to, says who. And I hope you had some observations. I had some observations. I realized that a lot of those I need to messages were messages from kind of cultural expectations. And most of those cultural expectations were about the outward image that I should be projecting. There's a few of those that I have sensed some freedom to unfollow, unfollow, unfollow. Throw off that pressure that somebody else wants you to be something, to project something, to do something so that you can look good. Because the reality is, they probably want that for your image for their own benefit. And so I looked at my list and says who? There were some people on there. Says Erica, my wife. I didn't listen to her. Says my kids. I noticed as I evaluated my own list, I have a few very specific people whose voices I've allowed some space in my mind. And most of the messages that they're giving me, they're good. Most of them have to deal with inner identity, but some of them have to do with outward image of who they think I should be and how they think I should act. And those are the ones that weigh me down and bring unrealistic pressure. And here's what I discovered. Every voice has mixed motives. Even people who genuinely care about us. They may not even realize it when the expectations they put on us is for us to act a certain way, dress a certain way, behave a certain way, talk a certain way, not for our benefit, but for their benefit. And they don't even know, they don't even realize it because the messaging to project an identity is so loud and so powerful in our culture. Jesus even recognized it, that really good people fell for it. And so part of not living under crushing pressure is to think through the messaging I need to. Says who? And for everyone, even people who love us, to say, is that a message about outward image or about inner identity? And if it is really a message about projecting an outward identity that weighs heavy on you, I want to give you permission to at least snooze that voice, that expectation, and see if this might be a gift from God to say, thank you, but no thank you. I know you want that for me, or you want that from me. I'm just not going to, because that's a pressure that I just can't carry. So that you can give energy to your inner identity the person that God has created you to be, the person God wants you to be. Your true beauty, that when that comes out and shines, it makes the world a better place. And it's actually fulfilling and meaningful. But to do that, we've got to cast off some external expectations. So today I want to give you permission to unfollow some image-oriented voices. And luckily we have plenty of time before we're used to getting out of here. So let's take some moments. The band's going to come back. We're going to pray together. But really, I've been watching the clock carefully. Why? Because I want to make sure at the end of our time together, we've been doing this thing recently, and I know it's kind of since I came back from sabbatical, because it's when I visited a whole bunch of churches around the summer, and I'm like, what's happening that's really, really good? And I realized, and I saw in several different churches, like the last thing they do before rushing out is to take some time to pray together, to seek God together. That whether it's something you heard in a worship song, something that we've talked about on the message, or some totally other way that God's been speaking to you because you showed up today and sat in the presence of God. We got to do some heart-level business with God in a quiet environment where that's encouraged, because it's not very encouraged in other places in culture where it's loud and noisy and all kinds of external expectations. So, with the remaining time that we have today, how's God working in your heart? Some image-oriented voices that I am praying, and here's how I've been praying for you, that God would give you permission to snooze that expectation and give you the boldness even to tell that person when you refuse to conform to how they think you should present. All right, bow your heads real quick. God, here's my prayer today. God, would you show us where we've been giving time and energy that's been wearing us out, trying to project an image. And we need to be done with that pressure. Lord, would you show us the pressures we put on ourselves? We didn't even realize it. And it's all about image. We've been neglecting our hearts. God, I pray. God, show us specifically the pressures that we can just cast off of ourselves today. And God, would you give us the power and the courage to do it?